Australia. Good morning, everybody across Australia. We have a fascinating webinar for you today. My name is Chris Baines. I'm from the DCM Group. We have a webinar, Is Your Business Prepared for Support at Home? Now, this is going to be a fascinating subject for so many reasons. Now, many people will have already read white papers, attended discussions and what have you. But as everybody knows across the country, this is a very alive issue. The fact that we support at home commences on the 1st of July. That is actually just 48 working days away. So we only have 48 working days to be prepared for the new world. Now, I think it's important to understand that this is actually a great opportunity for the sector because you have the opportunity to redesign your business and grab a growing market, just full stop, a growing market, because over the next 24 months, the number of home care packages is going to, support at home packages is going to increase by 50%. So we're going at from 220 to 320 over the next 24 months. So it's a time of great opportunity for those operators who are prepared. Mind you, we do have pricing challenges. We have to understand, are we going to be transferring from social care to clinical care? And cash flow throughout all of this is going to be a major factor. So our four speakers today give us a great representation of people who are at the coalface working in the sector. Dr. Mohammed Al Ibrahim is CEO of People First Healthcare. He is a home care provider as well as NDIS. We have Janine Buckley, founding partner of Enkindle Consulting, and maybe everybody would know Janine from her days of leading Ferris Care. Nathan Beveridge, co-founder and director of Five Good Friends and Lookout Way. And Lucille Skomazon, partner and healthcare sector leader at Maddox Lawyers. Now, I've asked if Nathan can be the first to speak because just in the last 24 hours, in fact, in the last few hours, the department has released, and Services Australia has released new information, and it's worthwhile, Nathan, just giving an overview of what has occurred to update you. Over to you, Nathan.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, so I'm speaking sort of with my Lookout software vendor hat on today. And I know we've had lots and lots of people asking us lots of detailed questions, obviously, so they can plan their businesses. So just sort of it's a good opportunity to share what we've been able to get as a software vendor from Services Australia to help start building the tooling that you need to operate under support at home. So literally in the last week, we got access to the Services Australia's API. That's where we as vendors can get all the information we need to understand the deep detail of things like claims, service IDs, etc. So only yesterday we were able to make our first calls to that API, and you know, Services Australia has actually done a good job getting the information there. It's late, but it's there. So we can just confirm, and if you want to go back to your own software vendors, they are able to now get access to things like the service item IDs list, which, as we all know, the mantra is no ID, no claim. So those IDs are now available at Services Australia, which is great. So you can at least then start mapping your current services to those new service item IDs. We literally only got those today, though. So any other vendors are probably in there scrambling, trying to do the same thing. The other interesting thing that we've been able to learn is that it looks like Services Australia's policy at the moment on care management claiming is an invoice per activity of care management. We've worked through on our side a fairly graceful solution to that, but that does pose questions. So I think it's one for all of us as an industry to keep an eye on how rigid they're going to be on expecting an actual invoice for every 15 minutes of phone conversation versus an invoice at the end of the month, as we were planning originally, assuming it was going to be. So that's a bit of a curly one that's got us. And the other one that's becoming very evident as we start playing around with Services Australia's solutions or integration is daily claiming, as we all had great hopes of, isn't really what we thought it was. It looks like you can only have one claim at a time. It looks like that those claims may take up to 7 days to process, so you can't really submit them every day. And it looks like if you've made a claim for a period, you can't go back and put another item into the same claim period, which essentially means that the cash flow benefits we've been looking for may not be as real. So I think we're going to all have to assume monthly claiming for the first quarter at least, while we see how this all flushes out. But anyway, just as a vendor, we've been able to get early access ahead of a lot of providers. So just thought I'd take the opportunity to share. So thanks, Chris.
Thank you very much for that. Great to get more information, but actually the devil in the detail is, as an outside reader, I was quite alarmed by it, to be perfectly honest. But
well, at least it's there now, Chris.
Valid point. So we might move over to Mohammed, and I've asked each of the speakers if they could indicate 3 to 4, maybe even 5 elements that they feel are important in their business to be ready for support at home. So Mohammed, being an operator, could you give your thoughts for the viewers, please?
Hey, Chris, thanks for having us on here. Yes, support at home will bring changes that my business has never experienced before. People First Healthcare was built on a model of culturally appropriate care. We had a large numbers of older people that were socially isolated due to language and cultural issues, and our service model reflected this need. So now, with support at home, we have not moved away from social support. But we are investing heavily in clinical support, which where I believe the future of support at home lies. Support at home, I believe, is about keeping all the people in their home for longer. So level of dependencies are far higher now. I believe we need a lot more clinical resources, especially the nursing and the allied health professionals. As we all know, Commonwealth are funding high level of packages. There's going to be more emphasis on wellness and reablement. And as you guys know and heard, the co-contribution will change the service mix. Participants, they used to be called consumers, now we're calling them participants, similar to NDIS, in my opinion, are less willing to pay for basic services. And I think that people are going to be more accepting of clinical services, which is funded 100% by the government. For People First Healthcare, I think more than ever, there's going to be high levels of clinical care, has forced us to make big changes in our business model. And some of these things are having greater emphasis to what Nathan's saying on our IT systems to capture and report information. There's going to be a greater level of participant monitoring by our care staff and remotely by care partners. And when we're looking at centralizations of all our records, information needs to be current and accessible. Now, with greater push for clinical care comes greater use of checklist, menu-driven process by staff to ensure that our services are being delivered in a way that confirms our policies and procedures. We're also trying to remove the human error and mitigate risk. So all of this with a different environment, it's a lot. It's a lot that's going to be a big change. And the big thing, of course, is the move to higher level of care. It has on our direct impact on our workforce. So I'm fortunate enough to have established an allied health business and a nursing arm very early on in our development. So we are always on the lookout for strategic partnership with other providers. We need to upskill staff, especially for the requirements of support at home, and more particularly the new aged care standards. Even our current workers, I believe we need more additional training. We also forget that they are the frontline staff and they're responsible for monitoring a participant. They need to be aware of the deterioration in the participant's condition, and they need to communicate directly and sometimes urgently with our clinicians. So the other thing as well we touched based on, Chris, is about the reduction of care management fees. I think this is a huge change, and it's going to speak directly to our financial viability. Some of the changes we have investigated is due to the higher dependency of participants, more time is spent and needed for care management. Care partners are now going to be told to detail the records of time spent on care management and other tasks. Some of the staff are taking on new roles while others are being combined. We're setting up KPIs are being established to ensure we keep within our funding limits for tasks which are designed as a care management and those which can be billed. I think this is going to be a big key to our financial viability. And the other big thing is scale, in my eyes, is going to play a big part in our survival. We can invest in sophisticated CRMs and other systems which improve staff efficiencies and drive down costs. We can grow business geographically without the need to establish a large local offices. So I'm guessing everybody's thinking about how do we grow, and I guess how do we do more for less. So these are the things that I guess we're talking part of our management team, and things are changing day by day. And the biggest talking point for us is, I guess, we're forgetting the participants and keeping them informed of all this. And I think it's all going to come down to the last minute, to the wire, telling them all about support at home.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. One or two points you made that were particularly interesting. You emphasised the importance of wellness and reablement, and the fact that you've actually invested in an allied health arm as well. So you see this as a major factor in your business?
Yeah, definitely. I think the clinical care is going to be the big thing, where because it's funded 100% by the government, there's going to be a more of a push people using the clinical care, because there's an involvement of a co-contribution in the cleaning and gardening. I see that's going to all change.
And how's that going to impact your business? You mentioned earlier the importance of ethnic support, language, and so on. Have you got a view there?
Yeah, look, that's going to be challenging, because, that's going to be education to participants and informing them about all these changes and pretty much getting it relevant to their language and explaining to all that. Because at the moment, the government has released everything out in English, but there's been no other communications in other languages. So it's left to the providers to interpret it and explain it to all these participants.
There are many challenges there, but as you say, you've approached it as an opportunity, both in terms of expanding your services, expanding into care, and expanding your geographic spread. So you're feeling optimistic.
Correct.
Which is great to hear.
Yeah.
We might ask Janine, you are a consultant these days, but you have a large number of clients that you are supporting with your partner. How do you see the support at home and businesses being prepared with your clientele? What are you advising them?
Well, thank you, Chris. And just before I begin, I do want to mirror or echo your comments about the huge opportunity that the support home brings to the industry, and certainly the opportunity for providers to really start to strategically think about how they're going to grow and evolve and position themselves. But right now, I think the focus needs to be very immediate, and it needs to be on execution and really moving our clients to just thinking about how are they going to get across the line in 10 weeks' time, which is what you said. I think you said we've got 48 days. Yeah. And so I guess there's 4 or 5 things we focus on with our clients. The first one is that they've got to immerse themselves in the information that we have at hand right now. So it's much more complex than home care packages. We've got the Act, the draft rules now. We've got the draft supported home manual and the claiming business rules. We're suggesting to our clients to unpack those and summarize the clear business rules associated with each of the funding pieces, and then and understand what they know, and just as importantly, what they don't know. So they're knowing what they're needing to be asking of government and to be looking out for, and then translate those into draft training material and the workflows and scripts and information that your staff are going to need in 10 weeks' time. It also forms part of your stakeholder communications because you've got a better understanding of the programs, and importantly, that you also understand what your home care client management system needs to be able to deliver for you. And I know that Nathan will talk about this shortly and has already sort of introduced this where we're at with as far as detail, but we need our client management system to do our heavy lifting for us because of the complexity. And so we need to partner with our vendor to understand what they will get over the line on the 1st of July and what they won't, and what sort of workarounds and manual processes we need to do. And so really understanding where we're at and what the whole program's about. The second thing is that what we do need to know is we have to restrike all our home care package client budgets and provide a new client agreement for every single HCP client at the 1st of July. This means we need to finalise our pricing strategy. This is in May. As soon as we get back from Easter, we've got to do our pricing strategy. We need to come up with a price list, and we have to test that price list to see whether it's even going to whether it's going to impact on client service levels. And you have to make a strategic decision. Do you want a no worse off rule for your clients, meaning that you're going to offer them the same level of services on the 1st of July that they're getting now? And so that's going to influence your final price list. And I don't think we've got time to waste here in coming up with that price list. The third thing is that, and it's already been mentioned very well by Mohammed, was around our new client, the new regime for client management, and the fact that for the first time, we're going to have to invoice government for the instances of care management services that our care coordinators or care partners are delivering every day. And this is very new for a lot of providers. Our care managers, a lot of them are not used to having to account for their time every day on a client management system or software. And for the first time, they're going to need to be rostered, or they're going to need to be able to enter all their instances of service so that their provider or their employer can claim funding for that case management function, which is a very big change piece. And still, there are many, many providers who haven't moved forward on that piece. So they've got 10 weeks to get that happening. And I guess I can't not talk about the new client contribution framework. And can I just pause for a moment and say that, and it's a bit controversial, but I don't think the sector did ourselves a favour when we stopped charging daily fees to our clients back in February 2017, when the home care package program came in. As a CEO back on February 2017, for 16 years before that, we charged 17.5% of a single pension to contribute to our what was called then caps and each. But that changed because the market opened up. And so for the last 8 years, we haven't been charging. And all of a sudden, we now need to reintroduce a client contribution framework. And that is needing us to be very good at communicating these changes. I know it's not going to impact all clients, but certainly clients after the 12th of September who's been approved to HCP. We're going to have really strong debtors management processes, and dare I even say processes on how we can cease services in the extreme circumstances where there's been big debt and we can't continue to provide those services. So we're having to reintroduce something that has really been missing for 8 years. And finally, this, to get over the line, we're going to do some very significant, clear and smart planning and decision making as far as prioritization of what we need to get done now and what we can delay for both supported home and the ACT, because we've only got finite amount of resources, and we're going to have to prioritize certain things getting done. And that may mean at the risk of other things being delayed until after the 1st of July, even potentially, dare I say, things in relation to the ACT. And so I think it's about understanding what needs to get done now, next and later, and making those decisions around prioritization. But if you haven't planned well, then you can't manage what you can't see. So my final message is, please make sure you've got detailed plans in place so that you can make those decisions in the coming weeks.
Janine, in our conversation the other day, you mentioned how important it was for operators to resource up. That was your words.
Yes.
I.e., it's all hands to the wheel. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, well, certainly, I guess what I've been it's very much around the home care management system and the being ready. And I know that vendors are doing their absolute best. But if anyone can remember back again in 2017 when we had the big change to home care packages, there was so many issues around claiming with Services Australia. There was people that didn't get paid for several months. We need to ensure that we've got at least finance resources from May to, I'm going to say, for 6 months until November, so that they can ensure if they have to do manual workarounds, you're able to get those claims off, you're able to reconcile any claims of funding, and fix anything we need to fix with client statements, but really making sure that that financial side of home care, of the new supported home, is well resourced so that you don't lose funding, to be honest.
So if I can clarify that, if you don't have the IT backbone to provide that service at this point in time, you're saying you're going to need hands-on processing of invoices and timesheets and so on.
To some level, and I think even the very best, and I would love Nathan to chime in on this when it's his turn, is that even the very best vendors can only work with the information they've got. So I think it will get to a point where they may not be able to deliver everything that we need, and that there may need to be some manual workarounds, and we just need to be prepared for that. But it's not about our systems. It's also about, is Services Australia going to be ready? And that's really what I was referring to back in 2017. It was, I'm just going to say, quite a mess. And so I'm hoping they've learned from that, but that is a huge risk for us. Will Services Australia be ready? And I think Nathan's already alluded to some changes already. And will we be ready? And we just need someone who's going to make sure that they're managing the workarounds if it's needed.
We've just had a question come in, actually, Janine, on this. An issue which has only been vaguely answered. For existing clients who are not paying co-payments due to it being absorbed by provider, will they be expected to pay it now?
I think that question is around income tested fees. I think that's the question around income tested fees. And it will be the same, because at the moment, if it's a full pensioner or who's not paying any fees at the moment because we're not charging them, and they were assessed before the 12th of September, then they will not continue to pay fees after. They are grandfathered. Any clients assessed after the 12th of September will need to start paying. If they're talking, though, about income tested fees, then there will be the same arrangement. If you don't charge that client, then you're wearing that loss of funding.
So, for instance, a full pensioner getting a service for everyday living, and the 17.5%?
Yes, so for full pensioners who were approved a home care package after the 12th of September, they will need to start paying fees on the 1st of July. For anyone who was approved prior to the 12th of September, they will not need to pay whilst they are in the home care program.
And if the provider doesn't charge them, the service has been delivered and the provider has done it for free.
Exactly. We're the debt collectors of government, and if we don't collect it, then government aren't going to pay us unless that person has been approved hardship. So absolutely. So if you are meant to collect $5 an hour for a client, and you don't, then your $5 left, because the government's reducing your government funding by that $5, and you're down $5 an hour, which is quite significant. That could equate to 5% of your funding.
Whilst we have you on, Janine, you're speaking to your clients. What is your view in terms of margins, increasing margins?
So this is really an interesting topic. I'll keep it very short, but what we're finding is that a lot of providers don't quite even understand what margins they're making now in order to know whether that's going to increase or decrease. So we've been talking for 3 years to providers about truly understanding the true cost of you operating an hour of service in every locality, to understand, compare what's costing you to what you're actually receiving through your home care packages. And so this has been difficult for us to get a good gauge, because people aren't really good at activity-based costing or really understanding their cost of service delivery. But what But ones that have, I think that all of them have room to move to improve their efficiency, or they're not going to be sustainable. And I think that's been, I guess what I'm saying is really just mirroring or echoing what Stuart Brown has been saying in webinars for some time.
So for the purpose of the audience who may not have seen everything that Stuart Brown has recently been putting out, Grant Corduroy has been talking about a margin of 33%. Is that being discussed amongst your clients?
Yeah, well, there's been a range of so it's more about, I don't know if it was a margin of 33%, and that certainly may be the way that Stuart Brown has put it, but as far as having to increase their current rates to around 33%. So from what they are now, needing to increase it to around 33% or around 30% is probably what we're seeing on average. As in, that is what's needed to be able to try and recoup a similar amount of funding to be able to fund your services as they are now, and if there's a margin in there to achieve that same margin. So it is quite a big hike that everyone is proposing.
And I would think that many of your clients would be shocked that they've got to look at such a substantial jump.
Absolutely, and that's why they're looking at, you know, a jump that will they make that will not impact service levels for clients. So we're sort of seeing they could nearly jump up around the 30%, but it is different to every provider. That will still maintain service levels. Any higher than that, then I think it's strategically a bit of an issue if you have to go to your client and say, by the way, I'm increasing your hourly rates by 30% and you're going to lose services. Those two combinations don't go well in an open market. So it is about trying to position. That's when I talk about pricing strategy. It's about positioning yourself for your client, not just within market. If you don't think about your client, you're going to lose them. You're going to lose them.
That's commerce, isn't it? And
Yes.
We are moving into a commercial environment as opposed to a government-funded environment. So actually, capturing the true costs of each service is something that Nathan spends, I'd say, 95% of his time. So Nathan, would you like to just review where Five Good Friends and Lookout stand in terms of recommendations how to prepare for support at home?
Yeah, so I've just sort of focused my commentary on what technology should you look at to optimize margin, I guess, in what is an activity-based funding scheme. Activity-based funding scheme concept is what's been given to us by government, so we need to operate and we get paid by delivering activities. So the key thing, and Mohammed touched on this, that going forward, we need to have daily or real-time access to top quality data around the services that we are delivering versus our planned service delivery. Because unlike home care packages, if you've missed your service delivery targets in a month, you still got 100% of your package management fees and care management fees. So you were somewhat buffeted. Under an activity-based funding scheme, if you're off the pace by 5 or 10% within the month and you don't know that and you don't have the ability to course correct, you will end up being out of pocket at the end of the month versus your expectations, which could lead to immediate cash flow problems. So building out dashboards, having structured data from your budget, having structured data from the subsidies that your clients have access to, and understanding in real time how you're delivering services against those budgets, and having, as Mohammed said, key KPIs that you can measure daily so that you know if you're on track or off track and have time to course correct. Because the budgets, as we all know, go quarterly, they go away. So if you don't spend it in accordance with your agreed budget with your customer, it's gone for both of you. And so that's very important in our view. So the good thing is that if you get that structured data and you're tracking it really well, technology can start to play a really important role to surface insights and to surface opportunities to optimize the budget. So we do believe that with a use it or lose it type mentality of support at home, that will bring about opportunity due to consumer behavior changing. So if you are understanding your clients' utilization of their budget and you have things that you can recommend to them to take advantage of that budget, then you should be able to encourage them to take up the services that they want. And Mohammed's right, there's going to be some service mix within that. So understanding a service mix is important, and investing in things that people actually want to buy is critical. And I think that is the opportunity. If you can you take this opportunity to learn what will people buy to invest in themselves for their well-being and longevity, then that is the opportunity under this activity-based model. And in the future there, once you've got that data, having it all structured like this, it sets us as an industry up, I believe, very well for future use cases for generative AI. But we're not there yet. As Janine said, we've got to get to July 1 first. The other thing that I think technology has a vital role to play in the rolling out of support at home is anything that can drive efficiency across your business. Managing data in the back end, doing spreadsheet wrangling is a waste of time. Things like the fact that you can't claim for provider travel now means route optimization for your rostered care workers is critical. So anything that drives efficiency is essential. So areas that obviously are incredibly important to providers, rostering tools and the data to optimize runs, anything you can do in that area, anything you can do to understand your planned rosters versus your awards and your enterprise bargaining agreements before you submit that to payroll, so that you can have a chance to optimize and avoid penalties is another way that you can reduce unnecessary expenses. And there's a lot of technologies out there that can help in those areas. The other one that I think is sort of a hidden opportunity for the role of technology, and also a risk for the industry, is there's a real emphasis coming through on how providers and third parties interoperate, and how there's a greater emphasis on the expectation around what, proof of delivery, essentially. A lot of providers today rely on the invoice as proof of delivery. I think there's a role for technology to play here to enable the ecosystem that providers use between their own direct employees and third parties to improve that interoperability, so there's better visibility and evidence of proof of delivery, because the government's clearly looking for more. And technology, we've all lived through COVID. We know a QR code when we see one. So things like that will become very vital for capturing proof of delivery and feedback from our third parties, which we all depend on. So I think there's something very interesting there. And the big win for efficiency is investing in your teams, I think. Really understanding their workflows. Janine and Mohammed have all said they've got to reinvent their workflows. If you can digitize those workflows, that'll help you build quality. And if you're tracking those workflows, and you'll be able to then tell who's following these new processes that we've had to implement and who isn't following them, just as importantly, to make sure that we have consistency across our teams. So automated workflows, I think, is the next area that will help with our efficiency, that ultimately drives quality outcomes. As I said, the other thing I think is really interesting, and this probably talking more to the opportunity side of support at home, and I mentioned the use it or lose it model. It will remove some of the barriers that clients have had around spending their full entitlement. And so looking to technology to help empower customers to actually see what is possible from their budget, I think, is an exciting opportunity. Really bringing that to life and sharing with customers, well, did you know that you've got enough budget to do X, Y, Z based on your needs? And really bringing that to life and helping them plan how they want to spend this quarterly funding on things that matter to them and they're assessed to receive. So we've built a new structured budget tool, for example, and what we're looking forward to is building on top of that calculators and care planners and shopping carts and things like that. So I think you're going to see an interesting move to this hybrid model between self-managed and care managed that will be unlocked because of this greater propensity to spend the money that they've got available to them. So I think that's a really good opportunity, and technology will play a big role. And just finally, probably more on the delivery of care itself, I'm getting excited, and I'm seeing other providers get excited about the role technology can play in delivering health programs. So we all, there's a lot of, and once again, going back to that point, we've got to deliver or develop programs that customers actually want to buy. So, you know, we're looking at some amazing devices at the moment. Like there's a thing called a PeriFit app that has gamified Kegel exercises. And we all know how important continence is to avoid, management is to avoid UTIs, which is one of the biggest causes of hospitalization. So introducing these sort of more fun technologies to make it a better consumer experience so that they are willing to take on programs to support their wellness and reablement, I think is another angle that technology can play as you look to optimize your business under supported home. We're looking at balance games that you can send out into the field. And the good thing about those is a care worker can supervise these strengthening exercises under the telehealth supervision of an allied health. And as Mohammed said, you know, allied health workers are going to be hard to find under this model. So anything you can do to bring your care workers in to oversee clinical programs, I think is a help. So technology has a vital role to play there as well. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to invest in technologies. And as Janine said, resourcing up, we're strong believers in resourcing in technology because that's the future for home care under this model.
When it comes to the efficiency and therefore survival, and you need to make money to be able to expand and grow, the area that Lookout particularly can deliver, and other softwares, is that capturing the activity and the cost for every function, which you now have to capture to
Yeah, that's right. So it's very a lot of systems don't have the cost or they'll either have the cost side or the revenue side. They won't necessarily have both. So yeah, I think it's important that when you're making an active decision to refer out to a physiotherapist, either at that point or someone who's monitoring that activity needs to know for every referral out, are you going to make your desired margin if you engage that provider versus another provider? And so that's what we've been able to bring both of those, both the expense and revenue, into one frame, so that every purchase order you send out, every referral you send out, you'll be able to see, am I hitting my targeted margin? Am I covering my overheads? Now, there'll be a lot of reasons why you may choose to sacrifice margin to get a particular provider in, but by tracking that data, that's what I was talking about at the start. If you can see that, you can then go back and have conversations with customers and say, okay, you prefer that provider. That means my hourly rate for that service might have to be higher. And you can have that conversation with real data, which, yeah, I think it's critical.
What I'm hearing, Nathan, from both you and Janine and Mohammed, is there's going to be a lot more hands-on by senior management in terms of where is the money, what are we doing, how are we supporting that client participant as well as we possibly can, but also maximizing the fact that we have a limited number of customers. It seems to me like there's a lot more management time going to be involved in support at home, you know, keeping an eye on business, so to speak.
It's a good point, Chris. Like traditionally, you know, you look to the workforce that is attracted to this industry, they're carers and they want to look after their customers. So often under the current model, it's actually been easy not to talk about the financial side because package management, care management, etc. was there. We almost do need to uplift the front line to really understand, and as Mohammed said, understand those KPIs, particularly the commercial ones, because they are the people that will control and they're making decisions every day that can directly impact the financial performance of the organisation. So yes, I think management will have an early role to play in building out those KPIs and educating their team. I think it's going to be quite hard for some people to really care about the economics of, but that's the model we've been given. So that's the model we have to operate.
That's an excellent segue into Lucille's commentary on the sector, because it goes to responsibility of the responsible person, data being fed up to management and having insight into the business. So Lucille, if you could give us the 3, 4 or 5 points you think our audience should be very aware of in the 45 days left we've got.
Absolutely. And I will touch on that governance point as well, Chris, towards the end. It is a pretty important one. I think, though, where I'd like to start, and it's something that Janine laid the foundation for, and this is that providers must have absolute clarity of approach and clarity of content with their client service agreements and their client-facing documents. As you'd expect, this is an area where we really do see the impact of the move to rights-based legislation, and there are a few parts to this from a compliance perspective. In the lead up, obviously, to the 1st of July, everybody's scrambling, as we heard, to ensure that they're on track with their new pricing arrangements. And really, from a legal perspective, what this means is that there needs to be clear written and verbal communications and discussions with individuals receiving care. It's unlikely that some of the changes to pricing that will be required are covered in the mechanisms in current agreements because of the degree of increase of change that we are seeing and percentage just on unit pricing. So this means that consumers will need new agreements and price changes will need to be reflected and agreed by consumers. Secondly, the new client agreements and materials for support at home. We know from the rules that were released this week, we got another 200 pages, the final instalment this week, that there is an emphasis on individuals being involved in the development and negotiation of service agreements. So providers will also have to meet more detailed requirements about the information that will be provided to an individual at the outset where they're seeking services and then when they contract for those services. So it's going to be more important than ever, Chris, for providers to have a concise support at home agreement that is in plain language and readily understandable by consumers. This also needs to work from a process perspective because these agreements now are required to be reviewed on a 12-monthly basis. We have a short form agreement that our provider clients use and we've had great results with it. We keep it short on the basis that providers have other documentation that they provide to clients. So resisting the temptation to attach every single relevant item to the contract and increasing its length and complexity is absolutely key. I've always thought, and I continue to think under this new regime, that it's better to keep the service agreement to the shortest length possible and to have a pack that can be given to your clients, which explains other matters. It also gives providers the flexibility of being able to update those other documents when required without them being locked into and embedded in the terms of a contract. But it does require the provider to actively turn their mind to the documents as a pack that must exist together to ensure they're consistent, give the requisite information to customers in a clear and focused way. So, often an off-the-shelf agreement that hasn't been developed with or doesn't speak to your other suite of client-facing information is unlikely really to fill this brief. I think the other thing to be really mindful of when it comes to client-facing communications, contracts, documents, is the application of the Australian consumer law to all of these things, whether it's written information or information that you're providing verbally, because the requirements under the Aged Care Act are quite significant and detailed. Providers are generally very, very good with understanding and staying on top of developments in that area. But sometimes what we see slightly less focus with is the requirement to comply with the Australian consumer law in terms of understanding that the clarity of materials also means that they are not misleading or deceptive or that they don't contain unfair contract terms. So, it's great to do a first pass to ensure that it's Aged Care Act and Aged Care Rule compliant, but you really need to do a second pass of your materials as a whole to make sure they meet that consumer law standard. And I guess the same could be said for compliance with privacy laws. So that's the first key area. The second one, just briefly, is reviewing arrangements with third parties, or what we commonly know as brokerage. So if you're a provider relying on a third party to deliver services to your clients, the position remains that you will be responsible for service delivery as a registered provider. But how robust are the contracts that you have in place with these third parties? Have you reviewed them in terms of responsibilities you have under the new Aged Care Act and under the rules? Have you back-to-back the necessary obligations you have with the third party and passed them down in a way that's easy to manage on a day-to-day basis? And enforce in the worst case scenario? Do you have the ability to get assistance from staff supplied by a contractor if something goes wrong with service delivery and you have to respond to a complaint? So really there's a question there about confidence around processes on foot to review relevant enterprise risks and undertake contract governance risk assessment for outsourced arrangements. And finally, Chris, just returning to your point on governance at the outset, it's going to be more important than ever for providers to be confident that they have robust systems and processes in place which facilitate the board or your governing body to have appropriate oversight of risk and compliance matters, and to be able to meet statutory duties that are imposed now on responsible persons. So asking questions like, do you have an appropriate orientation program for new board members? Do you have refresher training that you're rolling out for existing board members on things like this new regulatory framework, on incident management, on identifying and responding to trends in high risk areas, complaints management, privacy and data management? Is it focused in a way that it needs to be focused to enable board members to distill what they need to know, not to be deep in the operations of the business, but to be able to rise up to that level of the required of governance to oversee matters? It's important that the work of the governing body and any subcommittees as well, so clinical governance, audit and risk, are aligned with the requirements of the legislation. So, do these mechanisms have clarity and consistency of responsibility, and are matters that are properly for detailed analysis, are they in the remit of an appropriate committee? And of course, I guess the scaffolding to all of this is the documentation in place, and it's pretty timely to do a health check on some of the basic documents like your corporate constitution, your board and committee charters, your director documentation, appointment letters, deeds of access, indemnity and insurance. They should all be aligned with the legislation and clearly communicate roles and expectations. We've been used to now for a while the fact that we need a majority of independent directors on our boards. And with the influx of new directors, we are seeing a lot more questions being asked at a higher expectation sometimes around these things, including the board pack, I guess, and that whole kind of gnarly issue of data versus information, and whether the information that's reported up gives a picture that enables a board to do its job, understanding trends, overseeing strategy, safeguarding culture, and overseeing compliance. Is it clear from the pack that's given to a governing body what is required of them in the meeting? It's not only the what, it's the so what. What does something potentially tell us, and the now what? What do we do with this to provide safe, quality care?
Thank you very much for that, Lucille. Whilst you were running through that list, I was feeling exhausted. If I was an operator, I'd be going, how can I possibly get my head around all this? And at the same time, a question has come in from one of the viewers which says, does anyone have a draft agreement? Which is actually going to be my double question to you. Firstly, in your short form, this is what and one needs to have discussions with the individuals. They have to be involved in this discussion. Therefore, I'm assuming as a marketer that short form would be in language and presented with color and verb and my logo and so on, to say, we're going to provide these services. Do you agree? Then behind that, as you say, there's got to be a pack. Are these packs and all those policies and so on up to the board being informed, are they available?
Yeah, we do. It's our bread and butter, Chris. We're doing a lot of that work at the moment, as would other firms, active in this space. The last release of rules this week is particularly important for us, adding the final touches to our updated draft agreement for support at home. And it really is about ensuring that that document is prepared in a way that is going to be easy for staff to use and explain, and easy for consumers to pick up and understand. So I think, yes, we absolutely have off-the-shelf products, but there is also work that needs to be done behind the scenes to ensure that there are, I think it might have been Nathan that said, that there are scripts for people to use, that where it's necessary to go into the detail, people are able to lift themselves up from a nice sort of consumer-facing document to actually get into that detail and not get themselves into hot water in terms of kind of going down a path where, they may not be representing things in the way that they actually happen in the business. So yeah, absolutely, it is important. And to the point at the outset that I made, all of these things need to speak to each other. So an agreement can only get you so far if it's completely at odds with other information on your website or that you provide to your customers. Come the day where all of those things are put down and aligned together in the context of a complaint or something like that, those differences really do become a little bit jarring and problematic to manage. So there is a lot to be done, but there is a good basis from which to do it.
And as a layperson, what if we don't have this, an operator doesn't have this in place, what would be an example of things going off the rails? Who would give an example of the risk that an operator has? Would it be a resident or the family member challenging a fee? Would it be the department coming in or the service? What are you advising your clients to be careful of?
Absolutely. It's about consumers not being I guess adequately communicated around what your expectations are as well, in terms of, what a provider needs from a consumer, and, in terms of service delivery. So some of those pointy issues around ensuring that you've disclosed exactly what the fees are, when the service will be provided, when services might need to be suspended or withdrawn in the worst case scenario, and having, I guess, clearly set expectations around, what you need for your staff to go in and work in a place that's safe for them to work in as well. And so I guess we walk a delicate line about not over communicating these things, because that will make the documents that you give to consumers more complex and more lengthy, and counter to that simplicity concept. But there is a need to lay the foundations for these things. And if there ever is a complaint, it is usually the case. If it's something that a client or their family members are concerned about, the Commission will ask you for a copy of your documentation. So it will be subject to scrutiny at a point in time.
And the penalties, if the Commission finds that you don't have that document, what penalties would you be expecting?
Well, it's like many of the things under the new Act, Chris. When you read through it, you read through a section, you go, okay, well, that's an obligation of a provider. And then it says, okay, well, that's a condition of your registration. And so there are penalties for breaching the conditions of registration, so civil penalties that can be imposed, as well as higher penalties if that breach has a serious consequence for a person receiving care or services. So I guess it's a bit of a wait and see to see how those powers are used, and whether there's a bit of a grace period while people acclimatise to the new system. But you do need to have an agreement in place to provide services. So that's the one thing that can't be stepped away from.
We thank you very much. So I think it would be fair to say then, the first situation would be whoever steps in, you're going to be made to account for a poor performance or having the incorrect. But ultimately, if you transgress regular times, you could have your provider status removed.
In the absolute worst case scenario, yes.
Yeah. The area that we haven't really discussed in the remaining 4 or 5 minutes, if we can, the move from being under support at home from a social support model to a clinical support model. Does anybody in the panel wish to talk to that, and the speed, whether we see that is what is going to occur, and the speed that might occur in? Because that then goes to the resourcing up, as Janine would put it. And Mohammed at the very beginning said he has been investing heavily in allied health and more clinical support. Who would like to start?
I'd like to start, Chris.
Please.
Yeah, so I think we really need to understand what care management and what that service is going to be and what that task is going to be. I think that's the first part. And then what clinical is going to be. So I guess when a new client comes on board, doing an intake assessment could potentially be done by a nurse. And because that's fully funded by 100%, having the nurse to do the onboarding and doing the assessment in the first part, and then that nurse will then refer on to the relevant allied health. And then the ongoing of the service would then need to be done by the care management.
So but you're betting the shop, so to speak, on that the move is going to become significantly more clinical.
Yep.
And I suppose that goes to the fact that, you know, we're in a landscape where no new hospital beds, no new aged care beds, therefore people are going to be at home with increasing frailty. And that's if they can get access to support packages and so on.
Correct.
Janine, what are your customers saying? You're on mute.
I guess my view is that home care packages has been a service where we have been caring for for a number of complex clients for many, many years. And I think that we've needed to have a clinical governance framework in order to be able to effectively do this. But two things have changed. We've certainly got strengthened quality standards that is enforcing us to lift our capability around clinical governance. But the second thing is that we're introducing, for example, a whole new pathway into home care, which is our end-of-life pathway. And this is a very, very different environment for many home care package providers who, you know, I used to run home care and residential care, and certainly our staff within a residential care setting is highly experienced and skilled in end-of-life care and palliative care, where our home care workforce may not be that skilled. So it is about, with the introduction of these new pathways, both restorative care and end of life, that that organisations will need to build a level of competence very quickly, or if not partner with somebody who's going to give them that extended level of clinical skills that they're going to need.
Yes, I think we cannot escape the fact that the demand for clinical care at home is going to increase. The good news, if that's the right way to put it, for providers is that it is 100% funded by government. So there is funding there to provide that care, which is positive, but we need to be able to capture the cost. We have come to the end of our time. If I could just ask each person to reflect, how positive do you feel about the future with support at home? Actually, sorry, I'm going to hold for a sec. There have been one or two questions that have come in. One question, if I can, training on the support at home program is expected sometime in May. Letter to transitioning clients expected to be sent in April. How will staff respond to inquiries if they aren't trained? Janine?
I just don't think now's the time to be communicating to clients about the support at home that's my opinion. I think it's going to be a rush to the finish line. And I think Mohammed said I think it was Mohammed who said very likely it's going to be the last minute that we're going to be communicating to clients in a bit of a rush.
I agree,
because we need to get the information correct. And, you know, I think that June is going to be extremely busy month for providers, extremely busy.
Don't forget, guys, we've got an election as well, so this could all change. We don't know what's going to happen. So we'll see what happens after election, I guess.
Yes, it is. I have two more quick questions if I can, and I think out of respect, we should try and answer them. What is the role of the clinical care partner billed to care management pool? How does that differ from a clinical service billed to the new service list? So if I can repeat that, what is the role of the clinical care partner billed to care management pool? How does that differ from a clinical service billed to the new service list?
So can I just say, Chris, is that in the new supported home manual, the draft one, there is some very clear definition of what constitutes care management, and so very particular activity. And so reading that, someone would understand the difference between, because care management is about coordination, care planning, organising services, doing reviews, addressing risk, where the clinical service is in, more in the home providing clinical care. But my recommendation would be to read the definitions within the support manual. That may help that particular viewer.
Okay, thank you very much. And actually, several questions are coming in, and we may, if you don't mind, we might stick with it and answer them for those people who still have the time. And here, there's a question that's come up that we've discussed editorially quite a lot. A question my provider cannot answer is if a customer is on a current home care package and will be approved for a higher level prior to July 1st, are they able to move to the home care package on the higher level once available and remain on that?
Yes.
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 Well, that's good news. Next question. We can't provide services that aren't in a particular support plan, but how quickly can we have the support plan reviewed by the single assessment service? Currently, this takes an inordinate amount of time. So how does that at-risk client receive services that there is no funding for?
That's a great question. I think that is a known risk for the scheme. We've been working with government for years, encouraging them to enable self-referrals based on key criteria. Unfortunately, at the moment, we're reliant on the capacity of that assessment team. And I do think that is a risk. And I guess that's to some extent what the care management pool is there to do, to allow you to at least wrap extra supports from a care management point of view around them, taking from that pool as needs escalate. But yes, that's really over to the assessment team to be more responsive than they are at the moment.
I'm going outside of the parameters of this webinar, but how long does it take to get an assessment done these days?
Actually, Chris, we've got clients actually calling, and my aged care operators are telling them call us after 1st of July. So some people have actually been turned down and been told to contact them 1st of July for an assessment.
The assessment service have just have got a lot on their plate at the moment, because there's been the requirement for all Commonwealth Home Support clients who have not had an assessment to date to get that needs to be completed by the 30th of June, and no doubt that will extend over. So I think there's some other factors there that are going to absolutely create a risk there that has been described by that viewer. Certainly, I don't think we are scared about what those timeframes are going to look like. And the example of what that viewer is saying is that if you've got a support plan that's been approved, a support plan, and it doesn't have transport approved, for example, and that person is needing urgent transportation, what do you do? Because it's not consumer-directed care anymore; it's much more prescribed, or that's what we're expecting. And so we don't have the flexibility to address those urgent matters. So it is a real issue that viewer has raised.
A legal question for Lucille. Would there not be a duty of care responsibility on the operator being aware that participant requires that transport urgently?
This is one of the key issues, I guess, Chris, and always has been with just the home care program as well, and that is that point of escalation and reporting and identifying when somebody needs something, and ensuring that you've got systems in place so that staff who may not necessarily be nursing staff or allied health workers can actually identify where there's a change and facilitate that being reported in and dealt with the care management team. So there is a duty of care, yes, and it's important that providers have systems and training built in for their staff at all levels to ensure that those changes are picked up and that escalation can happen.
Out of curiosity, how many board members would be aware of this duty of care, the extent of duty of care?
Well, hopefully most of them. Certainly, it is something that is actively discussed in the boards that I have conversations with, in terms of not only the duty that exists at a provider level and has always done so, but under the new regime, the new statutory duties that apply to responsible persons and providers as well. So that is something that should be squarely on the agenda for board education, if there is any doubt about that.
Sorry, somebody was going to make a comment. Thank you, Lucille.
Chris, I was just going to say, and this is for another webinar topic, but all of these issues are something that are ripe for generative AI and other types of AI models for the industry. We're working with organisations around the world that, they're able to predict falls risks 7 days out. They're able to predict they're able to keep hospitalisations down by analysis of available data. So to Lucille's point, care workers do walk out of the home, they input data, and that is analysed, and then the most at-risk residents are identified and prevented from harm. So that is, I think, once we get through this phase of getting our industry operating, I think that is a very exciting future for our industry.
Yes, when one looks optimistically, the sector, let's say in 12 months' time, may be in a position to be proactive and actually contributing to the wellness.
Yeah, unfortunately, we've all got to just stare at our navels for the next 6 months.
One final question, Lucille. A viewer has asked, Lucille mentioned that the government has released the last part of the legislation, which means providers can now start to form service agreements. Where was this information released? There's just seeking that.
I've actually just answered that one in the chat, Chris. So release 4B of the rules was published in draft on the 15th of April, so just this week, and I've popped a link in the Q&A where people can find that and all previous releases of the draft rules as well.
Fantastic. We have gone slightly over time. I do greatly appreciate the time that you've given to us, Mohammed, Nathan, Janine and Lucille. The audience, by virtue of these questions coming in, obviously feel the same. So I hope that has helped everybody to give you some things to think about in preparing for support at home. We do see it as optimistically, because we are all optimists. As Nathan indicated, in 12 months' time, and by the way, Mohammed as well spoke of the importance of wellness programs. We have an opportunity to contribute significantly to older Australians having a better quality and better quality care in later life. So thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next time.